Today, I present to you the first part of a pattern presentation on the topic of gambling addiction. Hello, my name is Nefret. Today we will discuss the next facet of the complex addiction problem, gambling addiction. As always, after this lesson, you can ask your questions to my colleague Shahsahadab Sarah. Ludomania, Latin, ludo I play plus ancient Greek, mania. Madness, attraction, literally, attraction to playing, gambling addiction, pathological gambling, English, gambling. Playing for money is a mental disorder characterized by frequent, repeated episodes of gambling that dominate a person's life and lead to a decline in social, professional, material, and family values. Such a person does not give the proper attention to their duties in these areas. The World Health Organization refers to this disorder as pathological attraction to gambling. Slot machines with real money have long been widespread worldwide. The widespread availability of slot machines and the opening of numerous casinos and betting shops, including online casinos, have led to an increasing number of people succumbing to gambling. For example, in England, low cinema attendance became a problem as early as the 1970s, which, due to the growing popularity of slot machine salons, resulted in the closure of cinemas. In the USA, the number of problem gamblers, compulsive gamblers, who are so addicted to slot machines that their lives are entirely subordinated to this passion, is, according to our Volberg, 1996, 5% of the population. Data from other researchers, Lodesser et al., 1999, show that the number of problem gamblers in Canada alone increased by more than 75% in the first half of the 1990s. In the literature, however, there continues to be debate over whether gambling addiction is a true addiction or rather a form of obsessive-compulsive disorder. Signs. C. P. Korolenko and T. A. Domskik, 1990, identified a number of signs characteristic of gambling as addictive behavior. These include constant engagement, increased playing time, change in interests, displacement of previous gaming motivations, constant thoughts about the game as well as dominance and imagination of situations related to game combinations. Loss of control, expressed as an inability to stop playing, both after a big win and after repeated losses. Psychological discomfort, irritation, and anxiety occur relatively shortly after playing, associated with an overwhelming desire to play again. These states resemble withdrawal symptoms in drug addicts in many ways. They are accompanied by headaches, sleep disturbances, anxiety, depressive mood, and concentration problems. Characteristically, there is a gradual increase in the frequency of playing and the desire to take ever greater risks. Periodic states of tension, accompanied by a playful instinct, an overwhelming desire to find an opportunity to play. A rapidly increasing decline in the ability to resist temptations. This manifests itself in that, despite the decision to stop permanently, the gambling addiction re-emerges at the slightest provocation, meeting with old acquaintances, conversations about gambling, the presence of a casino nearby, etc. Risk factors. Experts at Mayo Clinic and other studies indicate that gambling addiction can be attributed to biological, genetic, and environmental factors, such as psychological disorders, the presence of substance use disorders, personality disorders, emotional states, age and gender, mostly among adolescents or middle-aged people and more common in men than women, influence of family or friends, personality traits, video games, including all factors resembling gambling, such as slot machines or loot boxes, medications with rare side effects, e.g., antipsychotics or dopamine agonists, traumatic illnesses, occupational stress, loneliness, other addiction disorders. Etiology, biological concept. There is evidence to suggest that pathological gambling is a form of addiction similar to chemical dependency. It has been observed that some pathological gamblers have lower noradrenaline levels than normal players. Recent studies on this relationship indicate that noradrenaline is released during stress, excitement, or thrill, so pathological gamblers compensate for their undersupply by gambling. Studies comparing pathological gamblers with substance-dependent individuals concluded that compulsive players exhibit more severe physical symptoms during withdrawal. A serotonin deficiency can also contribute to compulsive behavior, including gambling addiction. The results of a study showed that behavioral disorders, such as problematic gambling and substance use disorder, are closely linked. The sensitization theory indicates that these disorders are characterized by compulsive drives towards unhealthy behavior and an inability to control them. The dopamine dysregulation syndrome was observed in the aforementioned theory in relation to activities such as gambling. At a conference in Berlin, a limited study was presented suggesting that the release of opioids in problem gamblers differs from that in the general population, but in a completely different way from individuals with a substance use disorder. Some medical authors suspect that the biomedical model of problem gambling may not be helpful, as it focuses solely on individuals. These authors point out that social factors can be a much more important determinant of gambling behavior than brain chemicals, and they suggest that a social model might be more useful in understanding the problem. For example, a clear increase in problematic gambling in the UK can be better understood as a consequence of legislative changes that came into effect in 2007, which allowed casinos, bookmakers, and online betting sites to advertise on television and radio for the first time and relaxed restrictions on opening betting shops and online gambling sites. There were also studies showing how factors such as gender and age can influence how a person is affected by gambling. Examples include the likelihood that addiction is 11% more prevalent in men than in women, and the fact that the age group of 19 to 29 years has the highest risk of developing problematic gambling or pathological gambling habits. Psychology. It is believed that several psychological mechanisms are involved in the development and maintenance of problematic gambling. Firstly, reward processing appears to be less developed in problem gamblers. Secondly, some individuals use problem gambling as an escape from the issues in their lives, an example of negative reinforcement. Thirdly, personality factors such as narcissism, risk-seeking, sensation-seeking, and impulsivity play a role. Fourthly, problem gamblers exhibit several cognitive distortions, including the illusion of control, unrealistic optimism, overconfidence, and the gambler's fallacy, the false belief that a series of random events tends to correct itself, so that the absolute frequencies of each of the different outcomes balance each other out. Fifthly, problem players represent a chronic state of a behavioral spin process, a gambling spin as described in the criminal spin theory. Criminal spin is a phenomenological model in criminology that depicts the development of criminal behavior. The model refers to those types of behavior that start as something small and innocent, without malicious or criminal intent, and as a result of a situation leading to the next, an almost inevitable chain of reactions is set in motion, triggering counterreactions, culminating in a spin of increasingly intense criminal behavior. The criminal spin model was developed by Professor of Criminology Natty Ronell and his research team in the Department of Criminology at Bar-Ilan University. It was first presented in 2005 at a Bar-Ilan conference titled Appropriate Law Enforcement. V. Zaitsevan A. F. Shaidulina, 2003, particularly focus on the so-called thinking errors that characterize the irrational attitudes of compulsive gamblers. These thinking errors can be strategic in nature and lead to a generally positive attitude towards addiction, or tactical, triggering and maintaining a gambling trance mechanism. Strategic thinking errors include the following internal beliefs: money solves everything, including emotional and relationship problems. Uncertainty about the present and the expectation of success through winning, the idea that successful gambling can overcome life's failures. Replacing thoughts of control over one's own future with fantasies of winning. Tactical errors include belief in a successful, lucky day. the belief that a turning point in gambling is inevitable. The idea that debts can only be paid off through gambling, i.e., by winning. An emotional attachment only to the last game episode, while vowing never to play again. The belief that one can only gamble with a part of one's own money. Perception of money during the game as chips or numbers on a display. Pathological gambling resembles many other impulse control disorders, such as kleptomania. Studies from the population and clinics indicate that pathological gamblers are highly likely to have other mental health issues simultaneously, including substance use disorders, mood and anxiety disorders, as well as personality disorders. The diagnostic criteria for problematic gambling and substance use disorders partially overlap. Pathological gamblers often also suffer from a substance use disorder. The so-called telescope phenomenon describes the rapid development from initial to problematic behavior in women compared to men. This phenomenon was originally described in connection with alcoholism, but has also been applied to pathological gambling. Biological data also support a link between pathological gambling and substance use disorders. A comprehensive study by the British Gambling Commission from 2018 also indicated a link between gambling addiction and decreased physical activity, poor nutrition, and overall well-being. The study associates problematic gambling with a range of issues that affect relationships and social stability. Part 1 is over. I just need a short break. Then we will continue with the discussion on gambling addiction as a diagnosis and treatment options. See you soon.